My name is Jill Snyder. I lead our cost and competitive engineering team at G Appliances. Today I'm going to walk you through a little bit about G Appliances so you can understand the breadth of product that we have that we are faced to cost every single day. We'll talk about our starting point with a priori, the business outcomes, key learnings we've had along the way, what the future holds for us, and then we'll close with any questions. So now first, a little bit about G Appliances. I like to show this slide just to really highlight the breadth and the number of engineers that we support. So we are located in Louisville. I'll show you the next slide, some of our other facilities that we have, but we have 1,600 manufacturing design engineers. You was having a conversation earlier about centralization versus decentralization, and so we are very centralized because if we could think about 800 design engineers, that's a lot of design engineers to support, and so we are a very centralized team because of that. Now, Louisville, Kentucky is our largest manufacturing site, making washers, dryers, dishwashers, and refrigerators, but it is not our only production facility. It extends beyond Louisville, Kentucky. So as you look at this slide, you can imagine all the various products that you see here that we support. And you could probably also imagine all the different surface finishes that we have in our various products that we have to cost using a priori. So it truly shows the diverse types of products that we are faced with. Now at G Appliances, we have a micro enterprise, which really represents the product lines. Each product line, each micro enterprise has an individual who's responsible for the product and loss statement of that product line. In a later slide, I will talk to you about the Pulse team, which compromises of those micro enterprise leaders. They were very key as we started using a priori, and we met with them on a frequent basis, and we'll talk more about that later on. But before I go there, let me tell you a little bit more about our cost and competitive engineering team. I always say that we're a small but mighty team of 4, comprising of expertise across various commodities. On average, we cost about 7,000 to 10,000 parts per year. And I did say parts, I did not say scenarios. It is quite a lot. So that roughly averages around to 140 to 200 parts per week. Now, we didn't start out that number. We were nowhere near that in the beginning. We built up to that over time by defaulting frequently used PSOs, tuning, and efficiencies, which I'll talk more about. We used 25 different cost models or process groups, but again, we didn't start there as well. We gradually built up to that. I also include surface finishes in that number. And we have 10 different regions that we use. So let's talk about the starting point. I can't properly address a starting point without mentioning the time before a priori. We spoke a little bit earlier about spreadsheets. I also spoke a little bit earlier in the prior slide about the number of design engineers. So imagine for all those product lines that you saw and the number of design engineers, how many spreadsheets were out there that people had to use for costing. And so I truly call it the wild, wild west of costing before we started using a priori. So each of those product lines that you saw, they took their own approach, their own spreadsheet. Engineers would estimate parts using past purchase amounts. So no matter how old the data was, they would latch onto that information. Some would use material cost times a variable. Others used spreadsheets where the only inputs were weight and cycle time, and it was their estimate of cycle time. Sourcing had their own spreadsheets, but they didn't share those with engineering. By using a priori in 2020, we were able to tame that wild, wild west of costing and centralize all that costing responsibility to our cost engineering team of 4. In 2020, we completed the sprint activities with a priori and created material libraries, including PCBA and wire harnesses. When we started, we made the decision to focus our efforts purely on the commodity buyers. And if you look there, you'll see that's kind of the distribution that we have within our sourcing team. So we have our raw material buyers, we have our source finished good buyers, we have our PPMs, which are project managers in sourcing. But again, our sole focus during this point in time was with the commodity buyers. We also chose to focus just on those purchased parts and assemblies. We also decided to focus on piece price and not tooling cost. The capabilities are there, but we wanted to make sure that we had a good foundation on piece price first. Determining cost terminology is so important. When we started talking about should costing, the response that we usually received was, oh yeah, I have a spreadsheet. And we had to explain to them, it's not a spreadsheet anymore, it's completely different. So we really had to take a step back and educate the teams on the difference between a bottoms-up should cost calculation versus a spreadsheet-based costing. Therefore, each presentation that we did started off with the slide that discussed the terminology and the difference between predictive pricing, should costing, agreed upon pricing, etc. And finally, relationships. Relationships are so important naturally, but they were more so in 2020 because of COVID. We were not able to travel and visit suppliers and see their processes during that time period. So as we talk about those relationships, so again, as we were using this new tool, so it's April of 2020, we can't go visit suppliers, and we're trying to figure out how accurate is this tool? How accurate is it for cycle time? How accurate is it for the process? So we really had to build out those relationships since we were not able to travel. So as we looked at our subject matter experts, we had our factory manufacturing engineers that gave a great support for us, especially in the area of injection molding. So with our internal cycle times that we had a good knowledge of and we knew were correct, we used that to baseline the product to make sure that we had accurate cycle times coming out of a priori. Our finishes team helped us immensely to correlate between our internal finish specifications and what those equaled in a priori. Our sourcing team supported us by providing supplier breakdowns to use for comparing to the a priori output. Our supplier quality engineers were immensely supportive during this time period as well, again, because we could not travel to see those suppliers. So they answered a lot of our process-related questions, helped us to do process mapping of various processes, and if we had any questions, they support us in being able to ask the questions that we need to the suppliers or to go visit those suppliers. In addition to all this, we also had our project champions who we met with on a regular basis. And finally, the Pulse team. So we call it the Pulse team because it's a team of individuals that we met with or pulsed on a regular basis. And I'll tell you more about that in the next slide. So our Pulse team, it represented all those micro-enterprise leaders. So as I showed you in that prior slide, the product lines, those were our micro-enterprise leaders that we met with on a frequent basis. So we agreed on what those measurable outcomes were going to be, and we pulsed those on a frequent basis. If we did not see the usage or the requests coming out of a certain product line, they were the individuals that reached out to their product line to say, hey, we have this great tool, why are you not using it? So they were immensely helpful and supportive as we first started. And so again, the goal that we had was to gauge that penetration, both from a request standpoint and a usage with the product lines. We even met monthly with the CEO occasionally during this time period. Next was our subject matter experts Pulse team. So we had a standard monthly meeting that we had with individuals where we discuss the status of questions and the support we needed from the various groups. So for example, if we costed a CAD model and there was something that caused us to not be able to cost that part, something due to that CAD model, on a monthly basis, we'd review that with the CAD team and they would take that information back into their documentation to make sure that the next time that CAD model was designed, it was designed in the proper way for us to be able to cost it. We also had our executive business reviews, which we loved and we still love to this day. It gave us the opportunity to receive feedback on where we need to improve and the opportunity to brag a little bit ourselves. We also received valuable information from a priori in the roadmap and market indicators, which really helped us in planning where to go next. It also allowed us to communicate our vision and our dream with a priori and to review the status of our request for enhancements. Now, it is just as important to receive feedback from those recipients of the should cost output. Therefore, we use a survey or another means to receive feedback from those folks, not just from the top down, but naturally from the embedment of those individuals that are using the data that we provide. It encourages full embedment and not just a check the box approach. Now, as we talk about 2021 to 2022, this was a very busy time period for us. We've all seen the inflation charts that we had during this time period. So therefore, for us, supplier requests for price increases due to labor or material was frequent. We were basically keeping up with the sourcing requests for should cost analysis. It was a hard time to keep up and to do some of the things that we wanted to do in a priori to improve. During this time, we had to find ways to be more efficient with a team of only 4. We utilized our expert services hours every single month, which has been a huge reason for our success, and I cannot say that enough. To improve speed and efficiency, we had our expert services default some frequently used PSOs, and to make other changes to the model by making cost model updates. So for example, if we saw that an individual had a spreadsheet, color for example, that they had to use every time they were costing a part, we wanted to get that into the application. And that was our goal. And that was what was able to help us in terms of speed and efficiency. Also during this time period, should cost was added to our eRFQ tool to quote the same parts that our suppliers were quoting. We essentially became the fourth quote in addition to our other 3 supplier or more quotes that we were receiving. We added more a priori process groups during this time period to our capabilities, and we built spreadsheet-based cost model to cover parts, such as glass, that we needed to be able to cost in order to cost a complete oven door and other assemblies. This was also a time period during supply chain turnover and sourcing, where we would get someone trained and knowledgeable on should costing and how to use our outputs, only to have that person leave the company or to train a new person on a new commodity. When things were more stable during 2023 to 2024, we standardized our should cost training in our LMS system and made it part of our standard onboarding process so that everyone received the same training. In sourcing, we have competency such as financial and business acumen. We also, and those have requirements by job level and job type. Should cost was added to our existing sourcing competency, and requirements were provided by job level and by job type. We also grew our capabilities by adding, again, more a priori cost models. By using a combination of those a priori cost models and spreadsheets, we were then able to cost small appliances, such as countertop appliances in a priori. The majority of the parts would run through a priori, and a few would use spreadsheets, such as, again, glass. So as I mentioned before, we did not start off with all of those cost models, those process groups initially. We started small and we grew. As a priori was releasing new cost models such as roll form, we were very anxious to get our hands on those because we'd wanted them for a very long time period. So again, as we felt like we knew a cost model well, a process group very well, we would add one more. Operating with peaks and valleys of requests, we would use a time period of valleys to add capabilities and to add new cost models to our lineup. The last one that we added was bulk costing, and I will tell you more about how that helped us immensely. So now we're back to the wild, wild west of costing, only this time it was competitive costing. So again, before 2025, we were located in sourcing. Then we were asked to kind of tame the wild, wild west of competitive costing. And so in 2025, we became part of the technology organization faced with being able to tame this wild, wild west of product costing. So again, we're back to the situation where every single product line is doing their own teardown. Every single product line has their own spreadsheet again. In that same type of commodity, that spreadsheet varied by product line for the same commodity. As well, the data gathered during those teardowns did not include the data that we needed to be able to properly cost those competitive parts using a priori. And in addition to that, any competitive costing done by the product lines for competitive parts did not take into account the region of production of that product. So in 2025, we came out of the sourcing organization into the technology organization to be able to get a focus and to get our arms around the competitive product costing. Therefore, similar to before, we centralized all the competitive product costing activity, got a hold of all those spreadsheets, and got those out of the hands of folks. So our goal was to bring to the product lines a standard costing template, material cost, and methodology, because again, each of them were using their own. We still hold all the prior responsibilities that we had of costing parts, assemblies, and product requests from sourcing and engineering, but added the responsibility of competitive product costing. And so we still have that same team of 4, but now they gave us a co-op. He does a great job, and I'll be honest with you, if it weren't for AP Academy, he would not be where he is today, but with AP Academy, he is doing quite well. So the only way for us to be able to manage the competitive product costing was by using bulk costing. It was the only way. It has been a lifesaver for us in this area, and the only way we've been able to do this by adding just a co-op. And so we've been able to also use AI to take any outputs we have for our competitive product costing, to translate those automatically into the spreadsheet that we use for bulk costing, and then input that into a priori. Again, it's been literally the only way we've been able to survive with competitive product costing. So before, the product lines were not able to represent the data by the region of production of that product. By using a priori's user-guided costing, we are now able to provide that cost data to the product lines that include the production region for those products. It also allowed us to compare the same unit in multiple different regions, which has been very helpful for tariff comparisons. Now let's talk about business outcomes. So by using a combination of those spreadsheet-based cost models, again, think of items like glass and a priori's, we've been able to cost 92% of our spend. Some of it we don't tackle, such as product literature, bags, bubble wrap, et cetera, right? We don't cover those areas. Now for our ROI, we have exceeded our ROI goal for every single year since we've been using a priori, and that is measured as both investment and resources. Now this does not include our competitive product costing. Our goal is by the end of the year to be able to take that separate spreadsheet that's keeping track of competitive product costing opportunities and roll that into this. For right now, this is what we've been having for the last many years just on the purchase parts and assemblies. But again, we would not have been able to have this success without expert services. Now, as we talk about penetration and sourcing, and so again, we go back to that same chart that we showed before, the source finished goods, the raw materials, and then we have those commodity buyers that represent a percentage of our sourcing organization. We have really struggled a lot over the years with training an individual, only for that individual to change commodities or to change roles or to leave the company. And so a lot of the savings that we've had have been in those buyers that have stayed and have been in the same commodities for many years. And so when you look at that, you'll see we received great savings for sure, but there's still a lot that we can do. As well, our goal was always to get back to tooling cost, and every single year something seems to happen, which does not allow us to get there. But eventually, we are going to get to tooling cost as well. And so that's where I show that in the end, we still have a long ways to go, for sure. Now let's talk about the key learnings that we've had along the way. I separated these into two areas, for those who are just getting started, and then we'll talk about those that need to keep going. But first, when you're filling out that piece of paper, the business champion is not just a name on paper, but rather needs to be a person who will always be a supporter of what you're doing, will never give up, and is well connected and respected in the organization. And again, connections and relationships are key for success. Don't try to do it all on your own. Pull in those and make them part of the extension team. They will also be champions for you in your organization. Have internal competency and should cost training for sourcing and for engineering. Utilize AP Academy for cost engineers. And for those of you that have used AP Academy in the past, go back in there. I don't know if you've seen, they've added quite a bit since it was first released. And so keep on going back in there, keep on looking at what they have because they're adding to it all the time. But again, as I said earlier, AP Academy has been huge for us as we have these co-ops coming and going every 18 weeks. It's been huge for us to have that time to be able to focus on costing parts and to allow them to get the training that they need. Create and embed workflows for requests to make things easier and more streamlined. Now, price versus cost is always a huge subject, no doubt about it. They're two very different things. We always tell people don't focus on the end number. Instead, focus on the data that you receive. Part weight, cycle time, labor, overhead, used to create that number. You will get pressure to change the input variables in a priori to justify a supplier's cost. Don't feel that this is necessary. Instead, understand why the supplier and a priori have a difference. It may be weight or cycle time or process, and dig deep to understand why. The tool is not meant to just justify a supplier's price, but rather to show you where to work to address the supplier's price or the supplier's process to reach that desired price. And again, don't compare the end number, but rather use that breakdown to understand where to look for the difference. Dig deep. For assemblies, use value stream maps to understand if all the assumptions of production location are understood. And last but not least, default and tune. This will give you speed, accuracy, and repeatability. Our goal was always to have two people cost the same part and get the same result. We never had that before using other tools or using spreadsheets. In the past, oh, sorry about that. Yes, and last but not least, default PSOs. And so as I talk about tuning, again, that's where I'm speaking to those that are using spreadsheets as their costing parts. Color may be an example of that. Get that information out of the spreadsheet into a priori. It will, again, improve your speed, accuracy, and results. Now, for those that are still going, and I want to encourage you to keep going. So again, here, the business champion is still very, very important. Don't let them go. Their job is not done. They still need to continue to be involved. Increased costing accountability, otherwise you will be exhausted. So again, we're a team of 4. It can be very exhausting. And so our goal was to increase visibility across the organization to make sure everyone is able to support should costing. Let them see what you see. Have a plan for turnover. It's going to happen, whether it's the buyer, the subject matter expert, the cost engineer, or even your business champion. By having your training, required onboarding process, and competency in place, it will ensure that everyone has the same experience and knowledge when they start. And remember that it's not an endpoint. And we made this mistake when we first started. So we're like, okay, if we just get one more cost model or one more this, or just get through this year, right? It's not an endpoint. And don't look at it that way. Look at that long roadmap, the long stretch that you have to go, and continue to focus on what your dream is going to be. And don't concentrate just on the tools and capabilities, but again, and consider the culture. The cost culture is going to be key and central to the success. And lastly, don't be afraid to be wrong. Just have the conversation. And we say that all the time. Someone will always point the finger and say, you're wrong. And we say, it's okay. We're okay with being wrong, but let's have the conversation. Let's figure out where, why, and just have a conversation. And again, bring data to the table when you have the conversation. So what does the future hold? For us, it's business intelligence. And again, a lot of folks get focused on the end number. They get focused on the opportunity. It's very easy to do. And then you forget about along the way all the insights and intelligence that it gives you. It's immense. So as we look at the last 5 years and 7,000 to 10,000 parts per year that we've costed, we've amassed a huge amount of data. And naturally, AP Analytics is a fantastic way of being able to go through and look at that data. It is a treasure trove for us. It allows us to perform focused searches in AP Analytics to find cost opportunities. You can use AP Analytics in a number of ways to find those opportunities by searching by material, design to cost, utilization, material cost, and more. Use AP Analytics to find trends by country, by part type, to help improve your sourcing strategy. Now, tariffs have forced our organization to countries where the buyer's knowledge was not as strong as the country that they were sourcing from before when it comes to labor rates, press rates, overhead rates, etc. Therefore, as you look at sourcing from an unfamiliar or new country, you review the massive data you have in a priori in the regions. You can see data for rent, utilities, interest rate, quality support, maintenance support, engineering support, tool crib support, materials, and labor by skill set. It is truly a wealth of information. You can even use that data coupled with data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, unemployment data, and interest rate projections to review with your entire sourcing organization and increase their knowledge on those new regions. By using the a priori data, you will receive information on process labor required for the part or the assembly, and therefore can use that information to determine the best country to source that part or assembly from. This prevents that one-size-fits-all approach to sourcing. It also helps to not waste the time of our suppliers who would not be the best option for producing that part. Also, again, stop focusing on that end number. Instead, review the cost breakdown to understand where to work and where the opportunity lies. So change the conversation. Use, again, that conversation with the supplier as an opportunity to learn. Utilize the data from a priori to understand where to focus the conversation, and you will learn something about your supplier and their capabilities in the process. And use a priori for pre-sourcing strategies. As we look at tariffs, don't just take an entire book of business of 500 parts and quote 40 suppliers. It's non-value activity for all of us. But instead, beforehand, try to focus that search by part type, by process, by capability, and knowledge of your suppliers that you gain during those conversations. You will not only receive more accurate results, but it will also give you less analysis at the end.